Yin slowly shifted in her sleep as she felt someone caressing her back. She slowly opened her eyes and tilted her head up as she could hear a heartbeat. She slowly shifted her weight, and eventually she noticed a pair of lavender eyes staring right at her. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," Sabito called out, and Yin slowly sat up on him with the help of her using her hands to push herself up. She then yawned as she remained on top of his lower body, and Sabito raised an eyebrow in response. "You sure do have a habit of falling asleep on me whenever we watch a movie," he pointed out, and Yin nodded her head in response as she shifted, only to hear a slight groan coming from Sabito. Her eyes widened slightly as she moved once more, and she noticed how Sabito had bit his lip to prevent himself from making another noise. For YouTube purposes, I will have to skip like a couple sentences because of the way they are talking. But anyways, let's get going. She spoke out, and Sabito rolled his eyes at how calm Yin was and watched as she walked towards the bathroom. "That woman," he muttered out as he got up and walked into the room to change. He then came out and was surprised to see that Yin had come out wearing a matching set with him, and the duo looked at one another and then began to go into fits of laughter. Telepathically, he spoke out, and Yin nodded her head in response as he went into the kitchen preparing a simple breakfast that had nothing but just the cereal and milk, since they were running low on ingredients to cook. "Hubby!" And Sabito choked on the cup of milk he was sipping on, and Yin burst out into laughter at his reaction, at how he could only wipe the spit milk from his shirt as he groaned when he realized he needed to change it. "Ugh, now I need to change my shirt," he muttered out, and Yin laughed softly as Sabito placed the cup down and removed his shirt. On the spot! And he turned to look and noticed how Yin was staring at him. "Like what you see?" he asked, and Yin nodded her head in response, and the duo chuckled as he went to toss his dirty shirt into the small washing machine and went into his room to grab a hold of another shirt. "Thankfully, I have tons of this color," he spoke out as she only hummed in response at what he had just said, and brought the bowl of cereal out and set them onto the table. "Does that mean I can dump the whole bowl of cereal onto you?" Yin asked, and Sabito shot her a look. Then she giggled as the duo started to have their breakfast. "What color shoes are you wearing?" Sabito asked, and Yin slowly shook her head in response. How did it become a routine for them to constantly ask one another what they were going to wear? Probably black. We have been wearing the white pair too often." Yin spoke out, and Sabito nodded his head in agreement. "What do you feel like eating for dinner?" he asked, and Yin pondered for a moment and shrugged her shoulders slightly. She wasn't sure, and she parted her lips as she put on her shoes, which Sabito did so as well, which he soon looked at Yin, who was still thinking hard. I don't know. Why don't we eat out for tonight? I've been eyeing this new ramen store since it opened." Yin spoke out, and Sabito raised an eyebrow in response once more as he jabbed his finger against her forehead. "And why didn't you tell me this sooner?" He watched as she finally finished putting on her shoes, which he followed as well since he was done, patting his hands dry. "I mean, you were so fixed on perfecting that Tokiyami recipe, I didn't even want to disturb you," she spoke out, and Sabito let out a sigh. Then he gently ruffled her on the head. "You are too kind for your own good. Now I'm afraid that people would snatch you away from me. Let's date so you won't be able to be taken away from me." He spoke out teasingly, and Yin's eyes widened at what he had said as he burst out into laughter. I'm joking. Don't look at me like you want to murder me," he spoke out, and Yin rolled his eyes in response as she punched him in the chest, only for her to fan her hand out. "Ah, see, now it hurts, right?" he spoke out, and grabbed a hold of her hand in his as he started to gently rub it as he tried to soothe the pain, and he chuckled at the point that appeared on her face. "Let's go before they start ranting about how late we are." Sabito spoke out, and Yin nodded her head in response as she and Sabito left the apartment. She then waited for him to lock the door, and the duo walked side by side, heading towards the lift once more, and it was a normal routine. It would be weird now to see either of them alone, given how they are always seen with one another. "Oh, wow," Sanmi mumbled out as he looked at how Sabito and Yin were the last pair to arrive at the entrance of the Hall Academy building, and he looked at how matching they were. Once again. Still not together? Tengen asked Sabito as he shrugged his shoulders in response, whereas Yin went to find Kane and the others who were waiting for her. Hi, Yin. You look so cute. And you're matching with Sabito-kun, too. Mitsuri spoke out, and Yin rubbed the back of her neck a little. Yeah, it's a routine. We always match when we leave the apartment. Not sure when it started. Yin spoke out, and Kane nudged her gently. So, what's your relationship with him? She asked in a teasing tone, and Yin laughed softly. Nothing much, just cuddle buddies? She spoke out, and the girls laughed, whereas Sabito came up and slung his shoulder across her shoulders. Oh, I see you deem us as cuddle buddies. I'm hurt. How could you hurt your husband's heart? Sabito asked, and Yin punched his arm and removed it from her shoulder. You have a heart? I'm surprised. Yin spoke out as he burned a shocked look at her face, and Sabito grabbed a hold of her face with his hand, his fingers pressing her cheeks together. Huh? He asked out, and Yin stomped onto his shoe harshly, causing him to let go of her face. That hurts, you asshole! She snapped, and the girls had to hold Yin back from slapping Sabito, and the boys were rather impressed that Yin had such a fiery temper. Okay, I'll buy ice cream for you after dinner, okay? Sabito asked once the girls had let go of Yin as he pulled her into a hug, patting her on the back. Ugh, stop it! Oh God, now I'm embarrassed. Yin spoke out as she turned to leave, and Sabito chuckled as he proceeded to chase after her. Well, I'm making a bet they're going to end up together pretty soon. Tengen spoke out as he turned to look to his friends, who started to place their bets. But it might be a little tough. Both of them are pretty popular in the academy. Kane spoke out as she walked towards her younger sister together with her friends, as they made their way out of the building, only to see that Sabito was being harshly kicked by Yin on the bum. I heard from Hakiji that Yin always rejects whoever confesses to her. Maybe Sabito might have a hard time, unless she returns the feelings to him. Sanemi spoke out, who soon let out a sigh as he scratched his hand out and grabbed a hold of Sabito on the back of his shirt. Quit making your roommate so pissed off. You might end up sleeping in the corridor. He spoke out, and Sabito chuckled as Yin stopped chasing after him and turned to start walking towards the academy instead, only for his friends to watch as he started to run after once again, and they could only shake their heads in response at how he was acting. He is the one who fell first, Tengen spoke out and watched as his friends nod their heads in response, agreeing with what he had just said. And they watched as someone had come up to Yin to ask her for her number, only to run away as Sabito noticed how the student was reaching out to touch Yin, and he had grabbed a hold of the student's wrist tightly. You mind? He muttered out, and Yin shot an apologetic look to the student, who turned to watch him run away in fear of Sabito ready to beat him up. You weren't being scary, she spoke out, and Sabito nudged his shoulders in response. Hey, he was about to touch you. How can a stranger touch someone he doesn't even know? He asked, and Yin shrugged his shoulders in response. I mean, girls do touch you whenever they want to feel your muscles, Yin pointed out, and Sabito raised an eyebrow in response, as he hooked Yin into his arms by the neck and ruffled her hair. So, you were jealous? He asked, and Yin shrugged him off. You wish. She stuck out her tongue, and Sabito rolled his eyes in response at how she was acting, and soon Yin felt herself being pulled along and noticed how Shinobu was tugging her. Come on, let's go. We are going to be late soon. Shinobu spoke out, and Yin nodded her head as she allowed Shinobu to pull her along as they headed down the familiar path they were always going to. I'll see you at lunch? Sabito asked as he was about to hold Yin by the arm, and she turned to look at him, holding her head in response as she watched as his lips curled up into a smile, her heart pounding hard against her chest. See ya. He spoke out once more and patted her on the head as he and her nodded their heads once more as she turned to walk with the girls, since their lecture hall were towards the direction of hers as well. Sabito-kun seems to care about you, Mitsuri pointed out, and Yin laughed softly to herself as she shook her head. Yeah, he does. I would say thanks to him, but my health is much better. Yin spoke out, and soon she noticed a slight look of her friend's face. Do you have feelings for him? Kane asked, and Yin rubbed the back of her neck a little, only to have the door to the lecture hall of her major being opened and she was pushed in. Save your ass. And Yin laughed as Hakuji went to chuck the bouquet of roses that were on Yin's table previously into the bin that someone had moved in the lecture hall. Another one? She asked, and Hakuji let out a sigh as he walked back to his seat, just as Yin settled down as well. I won't be surprised if they'd go for your locker. It'd be flooded. And Yin laughed at Hakuji had just said. I forgot that opening my locker ever since the first day of school. Maybe I should go and take a look later? Yin spoke out, and Hakuji nodded his head in response. So, do you have feelings for Sabito? He asked out, and Yin rolled her eyes in response. And here I thought you saved me to prevent me from answering that question. Oh, Yin, over here! Tengen yelled out and waved, which Yin soon made her way towards where her friends were seated. Yin, do you want to eat? Mitsuri asked, and Yin looked towards the table and noticed how Sabito wasn't around. She frowned a little then and looked towards her friends. Where's Sabito? She asked as she got out her phone and noticed he didn't text her as well in regards to his whereabouts. Oh, he got called to the gardens. Apparently some girl wants to confess to him. Obanai spoke out, and Yin swallowed the lump in her throat as she resonated the information into her mind. Oh, I see. Well, I'll wait for him then. Let me head over to my locker and check things out. It's been months since I last opened it. Yin spoke out to her friends, who nodded their heads in response and watched as she took her leave. I think she'll want something with soup. Sabito always orders for her something with soup, Kojo pointed out as they were about to queue up for their order. Yin let out a sigh as she stretched the sides of her body a little as she walked down the hall, where it would be passed by the gardens as well, given how the lockers were in the next building connected by the open hallway. She then let out a sigh as her eyes widened when she saw Sabito standing in the gardens with a girl who was holding out an envelope to it. Her lips parted as curiosity got the better of her, which she quickly hid behind a pillar and watched what was going on. He was laughing, and had a blush on his face. Somehow her heart clenched tightly by the way Sabito was laughing and smiling at this girl. She swallowed the lump in her throat as she tried to calm her emotions, only for her to tense up when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to look into the pair of rainbow-colored eyes. Doma? She whispered out, and Doma chuckled softly as he looked at what was happening. Aw, Sabito Doma is being taken away from you. How sad. But it's okay. I'm still here. He spoke out as his finger traveled up her chin as he tilted her head up. Sabito, on the other hand, felt something was wrong when somehow he turned away the random girl, and who surprisingly confessed to him. Kid quickly ran towards the hallway and immediately did. His lavender eyes widened as he shoved Doma away. Hands off her, you bastard. He spat in rage as he wrapped his arms around Yin's wrist as he tugged her towards his toned body and Yin's face buried in his chest. You all right? He whispered out, and Yin slowly nodded her head. But Sabito wasn't having it as he glares daggers towards Doma, who had his hands up in defense. He then tilts her head up and his eyes widened at the slight scar beneath her chin and got angry, about to lunge at Doma only to have Hakuji arriving, delivering a kick to his head. Bastard, this is where you disappear to? Hakuji muttered out as he grabbed a hold of Doma by the leg and dragged him across the ground, which Sabito and Yin could only look at what was going on. This was happening way too fast, Yin thought. You all right? You have a scratch mark. Are you sure? Sabito had asked, and Yin nodded her head in response, after coming back. Yeah, but what about your confession? She asked, and Sabito looked at her confusingly as his lavender eyes widened as he chuckled. Idiot, that wasn't a confession. She told me to hand you a letter. It's a confession for you. He spoke out, and Yin's eyes widened as her face flushed red, realizing that girls do like her as well. She muttered out, and Sabito placed a hand on the side of her face and gently used his toned thumb to caress her cheek. Admit it, you were jealous, weren't you? And Yin shook her head vigorously. No, I just was on my way to the lockers and happened to see what was going on. Yin spoke out for herself, and Sabito nodded his head in response. Then, let's go to the locker. He spoke out, and Yin nodded her head, and the duo made their way towards the lockers and eventually found Yin hers, which was right at the bottom. She squats down and unlocks the locker, only to have pink letters fully filling it out. Hell, some of it was literally flowing out like a waterfall. Well, seems like you have left tons of people heartbroken by not accepting their letters. Sabito spoke out as he opened his lockers, only to have the same situation. Well, sir, you have no right to say anything. She spoke out, and the duo chuckled at how things were going. It had been a similar way. This is just so stupid. Why is this happening to us? Ian asked as Sabito grabbed a hold of a chunk of her envelopes and proceeded to place them into his bag. Huh? You're not throwing them out? I always throw them out. Ian spoke out, and Sabito raised an eyebrow at what Yin had just said, and he nodded his head. Walking over to the bin, he proceeded to throw out the envelopes. What about you? You don't intend to keep yours? Yin asked, and Sabito chuckled then. I always bring them back to the apartment to throw them away. He spoke out, and Yin slowly shook her head in response. But then, now I don't see a point in doing that.